Why have we come to earth? Do you remember? Why have we taken birth? Do you remember?
Right. Good morning. I'm having fun today. How about you? Yeah. It's been kind of a quiet week or two for me, my life. Nothing much, you know. Nothing much. Nothing much. As many of you know, Cynthia and I tied the knot last Saturday night. So thank you. As many of you know, we were going to have a wedding next Saturday, or this coming Saturday. We're not going to do that, by the way, this Saturday. We are going to still do the wedding in March 12th that we scheduled, because we want to celebrate with you guys as a big party. And but when we decided to reschedule, several people said, "Why don't you guys just elope?" You know? And at first I said, "Oh, no, I want to party. I like to party, you know. I like to party with my friends, you know." So, but both of us have done the big wedding before, and so we talked about it, we didn't really need to do that. And then one morning I woke up and I realized I was going to be at the convention in Eugene this past weekend, and her daughters both live in Eugene. And my younger daughter lives up in Portland, 2 hours away, and you know, there's a few ministers going to be there and a few musicians going to be there, and we thought, why not? So I called up Reverend Linda Finley, who's the senior minister there, and I said, can we just during the dinner break on Saturday night, just borrow a little small room and just do a little private ceremony? And she said, oh, the heck with that. We're going to do it as part of the convention, as part of the whole ceremony thing. So we had some wonderful musicians who sang us into the place, and Reverend Bonnie Anderson, who's going to be here next Sunday, did perform the ceremony, all of about, maybe 10 minutes at the most, and a nice quick ceremony. And my older daughter actually drove all the way up from Petaluma with her fiance, so we had all 4 of our children with us, and our foster baby was with us too. Not planned, but there he was. And you know how that is. And so we had this lovely ceremony, and it was just very sweet. So, and I know that this got announced on Sunday, and I really appreciate all the love you guys have given us, from that. So, I think my Facebook page has. I think my life event change on my Facebook page has something like 230 likes on it. So, and a few people saying, to Cynthia, "Are you sure?" But anyway, so it's been a wonderful week. I also want to speak briefly about the men's retreat, because Roy talked originally to me a few months ago about getting this Rabbi David, who names it anyway, down here, Laszlo, and I'd never heard of him before and like that. So, but I trust Roy, and he brought in a great couple of guys to do the retreat last year, and then a couple of months ago, Laura Berman, I don't know if some of you remember, came to sing here and hung out with us in the afternoon for a little while, and she sent me a memo the next day saying, by the way, I have this great rabbi friend named David Laszlo that you've got to meet, and so I'm sitting there going, I said, okay, well, he's coming and doing our men's retreat. And then probably about 3 or 4 weeks ago, I had a minister friend of mine said, there's this great rabbi up in Ashland by the name of David Laszlo. I was like, okay, I got it, so not only is he coming here, but I'll even be at the men's retreat myself, so if you're a guy, I encourage you to be here. If you're a woman, if you can get into the drag and do it, we're good. But Mary has threatened to come in drag for this, I think, at one point in time, or maybe it was Sue. Maybe it was Sue. I don't remember, but anyways. We're doing the 4 agreements this month, and at the beginning of the first service, Luke gave me a great little metaphor. He says, the 4 agreements are like 4 notes that you can keep on riffing off of for the rest of your life, keep on creating new arrangements off of. You know, when rock and roll first came out, it was you know, kind of condemned because it's just 3 chords. You know, all the bands are just doing 3 chords over and over again. You know, and it's like, look at this massive body of work off of 3 chords. You know, rock and roll is supposed to die by about the mid '60s or mid '70s, and you know, it's still going strong today. You know, I think of Beethoven's Fifth, which has starts off with just 2 notes, bum 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 bum. And keeps on riffing on that for quite a while, and makes out this majestic symphony out of that. So these 4 agreements are 4 wonderful ways of looking at our life and working with it. And so we're going to continue to explore it today. We've looked at the first 2 already. So we looked at originally we looked at the dream, the Don Miguel Ruiz's idea that we are all in a dream, and most of us are dreaming a nightmare. We're dreaming of hell. And we've agreed to this dream through a collective consciousness, most of us unconsciously. We kind of got taught that from the moment we were born into this world, and we agreed to it to fit in because it's what everybody else was doing. And nobody said, hey, wait a minute, we could do something different than suffering and violence and war and lack and poverty and all this stuff. Most of us kind of went along and said, well, yeah, that seems to be the dream of the world. And we look around us, and there's plenty of that around, right? And so we say, well, that must be the reality, but it's not. As we good religious scientists know, we create our own reality with our consciousness, okay? And so we can change the dream. And many of us can live the dream we want to, the dream of heaven, even though thousands of other people are living the dream of hell. Okay, we don't have to subscribe to this dream. So this is what we're kind of looking at. In order to begin creating heaven as earth, we need to first of all practice self-love. The way out of all the stuff, the way out of this dream of hell, is to practice self-love. So I want you to start off with by just saying to yourself, I love you. I love you. And now do it again and mean it. I love you. I love you. I love myself. I love myself just the way I am. I love that song that we had right at the start. I love myself just the way I am. Am I perfect as far as whatever perfect is supposed to be? And isn't that just a dream and a definition of somebody else's idea of what is perfect supposed to be? Right? Yeah. Okay. So we're not that way. We'll never be that way. Nobody's that way. Have you noticed? Okay. So these 4 agreements are a practice of self-love. And I love the way he sets them up. The first one is a being. It's a beingness. The first thing we're to do is to not do. The first thing we're to do is be. We oftentimes forget that we're human beings and think that we're human doings, right? Because we're do. It's a lot of do. And so our first one is to be impeccable with our word. And the word impeccable means without sin. And the core sin that he talks about is the sin of separation. Even if you look at traditional religions, they say the core sin is separation from God. Separation from the highest thought. Separation, and where does God live? Within us. All around us, within us. Not some big guy up in the sky, but within us and all around us. And so when we are separate from our capital, what I call our capital S self, our high self, we are living in sin, separation, pain, suffering, and anxiety, right? You've known somebody who's experienced that, right? I have, so I'm sure you guys have met somebody like that, okay? And to use our words, the first agreement is to use our words to create what we want rather than what we don't want. And so we're here to create love. We're here to create oneness. We're here to create the highest thought we can create using our words. And one of the things he points out is that gossip is poison. Now, I have some friends, by the way, who decided to engage in positive gossip. They run around telling good things about people who aren't even there to everybody else. Now, that's kind of cool, okay? So that's the one gossip I'll accept from that, move aside. But for most of us, gossip is, oh, did you see what so-and-so is doing? What, all that stuff, okay? And so don't engage in that. Use our words to create what you want in your life. So that's the first one, be impeccable. The next 2 agreements are don'ts. So we have a be, we have 2 don'ts, and then finally we have a do. We'll talk about that next Sunday. Okay? But the two don'ts are, don't take it personally. We talked about that one last Sunday with Reverend Sue, right? How many of you were here for that talk? She did a fabulous talk. If you missed it, watch it on the website. She did a fabulous talk about that. And then today we have the talk about don't make assumptions. So don't take it personally. We're only hurt by taking things personally when we agree with them. Because somewhere in our minds we agree with what somebody says about us. You're stupid, you're ugly, you're not lovable. And somewhere in our minds we say, yes. And that's when it hurts. See, if somebody walked up to you and said, let's say Albert Einstein said you're stupid, he'd probably just laugh at him and go, you got a problem, right? And if they walked up to you and said you're stupid, you should laugh at them and say you got a problem too, by the way. Right. Did you get that one? Okay. So we only take it personally when there's something within us that takes it in ourselves and makes it personal and says, oh yes, this must be true about me. Okay? And so we want to make sure that we're not doing that. Take a breath. One of the things that Don Miguel Ruiz points out is that nothing people do is because of you. Most of us are so wrapped up in our own story, in our own lives, in our own metote, as he calls it, our own dream, that we're not really present with anybody else. Now, that's not you, some of you, I know that. But most of the people that we'll encounter in our lives are wrapped up in that. How many of you have had somebody who's actually listened to you? You've been talking to them, and they're not sitting there looking around. Who's back there behind you? They're not looking at their watch. They're not, texting or Facebooking. They're actually taking you in, and you can tell that they're actually just listening to you. They're not thinking what they're going to say next. They're not thinking how they can argue with you. They're just listening, okay? That's a person who's out of that dream and is truly listening and being present. But how many of you have recognized that doesn't happen a lot, right? For most of us.
But it's nice.
But it's very nice. It's very nice because then you encounter a person who's truly out of the dream, being with you, practicing self-love, practicing love of you, and they don't usually look at you afterwards and say, you're really stupid. Okay? Because they love you and they listen to you and they care about you enough. So nothing people do is because of you. When we live in self-love, we can't be hurt. Now there's a difference between saying, I wish you would have done that differently than you did it, and saying, and you're, whatever, because of that, okay? I can have I can say, it's like, I wish this would have happened, and that's just, I wish it would have happened. It says nothing about you. Do you understand the difference? Okay? So this morning, for instance, there was, the normal practitioner checklist is to put a glass of water down there for me to drink, and the practitioner who was on duty, we had Reverend Mary got caught up in a traffic accident, not that she was involved in, but from a traffic accident in getting out of her place. And so Marilyn was the only practitioner on board, running around trying to get everything done, and that got dropped. And so I just mentioned afterwards, it'd be nice to have the glass of water. Doesn't mean that she didn't do a good job. She does a fabulous job, right? And I love her, and I appreciate her as a practitioner, and I also understood the circumstance and was just a reminder. And actually, she did it on her own. I didn't even have to say anything. And so we laughed because now we have 2 glasses of water up here because I brought my own in too. So, abundance. Okay? But if I had said to her, it's like I really would have liked the glass of water, it was no reflection on her as competence or anything like that because I knew what she was going through. So, and if she would have taken it that way, it would have been, taken in personally. And I know that she's above that, so that she's not taking that personally, and she knows how competent she is and that she's a wonderful practitioner. Do you understand the difference? Okay. So that's don't take it personally. Number 3 is don't make assumptions, which we're going to talk about today. We make assumptions for 2 reasons. Number 1 is we need answers. Our mind likes answers, doesn't it? Oh, yeah. Don Miguel says, it's very interesting how the human mind works. We have the need to justify everything, to explain and understand everything in order to feel safe. We have millions of questions that need answers because there are so many things that the reasoning mind can't explain. It's not important if the answer is correct. just that the answer itself makes us feel safe. This is why we make assumptions. Isn't that fabulous? For most of us, it can be very uncomfortable to hang out in what's called the mystery, the I don't know-ness of life. You know, we find this in some of our practitioner or our classes we teach here. You know, the ministers and practitioners. Somebody will come in and say, "Well, why does this happen?" You know, and our honest answer half the time is, "I don't know. I don't know." You know, we don't have. This is not a teaching that says we have all the answers. This is a teaching that says we'll encourage you to inquire and to explore and to go deeper and to find that spirit within that is the answer. But we, as a teaching, don't have all the answers. I'm sorry, if you came to a church looking for all the answers, there's other churches in this community. They do have all the answers, and they'll tell you that. They're the right ones. Sorry. Can we live in the mystery? Can we live in a place where we don't have all the answers and we don't have to have all the answers? We don't have to intellectually know it all, knowing that we still live in a way and in a consciousness that is in touch with that which guides us in the highest and best way, but without us figuring it out. Have you ever noticed there's a whole lot of things you don't know that work out okay anyways? Okay? And so that's part of what we're doing is we need to have those answers. And so if we can let go of that, we stop making assumptions. The second thing is that we don't have courage to ask questions. We don't have the courage to ask questions because at some point in time, as adults, right, we're expected to know it all. We're expected to know everything about everything. You know, if our kids come to us for their homework, we have an answer for them, even if we have no idea how to do algebra. And never we're good at it ourselves, right? But we try and pretend that we have an answer for them. Some do. I'm not saying everybody here. But we have a collective agreement of don't ask. We don't want to pry. We don't want to go where it's none of my business. We should know the answer, and we should be right. Okay? And so we have this collective agreement. I'm not saying necessarily everybody in here, but as a culture, as an overall culture, we have this collective agreement about that. And so when we take that, when we take the don't take it personally along with don't make assumptions, or when we actually do the reverse, when we take taking it personally and we add making assumptions into that mix, it's a toxic mix. Okay? I make an assumption, I spew that assumption out, you take it personally, and we're off and running in a direction we don't want to go. Here's what Don Miguel Ruiz says about that. It's a strong word, all the sadness and drama you have lived in your life was rooted in making assumptions and taking things personally. All the drama that we live in our lives is rooted in making assumptions and taking things personally. Now, that's a good news, bad news thing. We already know the bad news. We've been living it for many of us. The good news is, if you find yourself in trauma and drama and pain and stress and all like that, you can sit there and say, okay, either I am making some assumptions or I am taking things personally. Which one is it? And stop it. Stop it. Okay? Because it's a great way to say, okay, something's going on here. If I'm experiencing that, then I must be making some assumptions or I must be taking it personally. And I can stop and I can shift my consciousness and I can get aware of that. That's the good news about that. So this works quickly. This works classically. This works like this. This has been a week of wedded bliss for me. Newly married, happy. Friday night, my sweetheart, my dearly beloved that I had just married, didn't speak up in a way that I could hear to say that she really enjoyed the dinner that I made for her that night. Now, she says she said it. I didn't hear her say it. I was leaving for a meeting. I assumed she was mad at me. Hear that assumed? I assumed she was mad at me. I walked out of the house also not saying anything. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't do anything. I know how to do cutoff. That's one of my patterns, okay? I can cut you off faster than you know how, okay? And so I just, boom, walked out of the house. I knew she was mad at me. Went to the meeting, had the meeting. On my way home from the meeting, I stopped up at the holiday market, bought myself a big old piece of chocolate cake. Brought it home, ate it there, and did not share it. Can I go to confession afterwards? Bless me. Bless me for I have sinned. That's how it works. That's how it works. Just that, bam, that fast, okay? Now, underlying that, see, I have an old pattern from my previous marriage. My previous marriage started off wonderfully and then took a left turn several years later. So I have this little, and I still to this day don't know what happened to cause the left turn. And the pattern was that she became unhappy with literally every detail of my life and everything I did, said, thought, felt, or was, okay? To this day, I don't know what happened, okay? But I heard myself sit there in the back of my mind and go, here we go again. And I was heading down that path again. 5 days into our marriage. Now, blessedly, I can talk about this because I caught myself, and the next day we talked it out. I can show you the bruises. And we talked it out, and we cleaned it up, and we moved past it, okay? But that's what an assumption and a taking it personally can look like. I assumed she was angry at me. I took it personally because I also sometimes don't feel completely lovable. Okay, I know nobody else in here can relate to that, but sometimes I'm weird that way. It can go just that fast. And so after I took it personally, I acted appropriately, right? For somebody who's hurt and angry. Our assumptions are based on a belief, and the belief is that everybody else thinks, acts, feels the same way I do, or they should. If you watch any of the political debates going on right now, they're all based on everybody else should think and feel the same way I do, right? Okay? And then there's this shock and surprise when, guess what? Not everybody else thinks and feels and believes the same way I do. And rather than taking the time to listen and inquire, because this is how you get out of assumptions, is asking questions and actually having a genuine interest and being willing to see a different viewpoint. Rather than doing that, there's just the finger pointing and the anger and the banging together of heads. Okay? So we don't ask questions. We also make assumptions about ourselves. So we're making assumptions about ourselves. We're making assumptions about the world out there, and we're making assumptions about ourselves inside of us, right? We're making assumptions that I'm not lovable. We're making assumptions that I can or cannot do this. We're making all sorts of assumptions about ourselves, again, without ever asking the questions. Somebody a long time ago told you you couldn't sing, and so you stopped singing. How many members of the choir had somebody a long time ago tell you you couldn't sing, just out of curiosity? Including the choir director. Okay, I love it. Yeah, who's a professional musician. I think Ella Fitzgerald had somebody tell her that she couldn't sing when she was young, if I remember right. There's a couple of very, very, very famous singers. Lucille Ball was told that she had no sense of humor and could not act. The Beatles were, of course, told their sound was passé, and guitar groups were on the way out, and all that stuff. Okay, so we've literally, it's do we buy that? And we've literally had people tell us that, and so we believe it and we take it in. Byron Katie, who's does a fabulous process called The Work, has a great book that's called Who Would You Be Without Your Story? Who would you be without your story? Take a breath and just contemplate that for a moment. Who would you be without your story? Her process of the work is a powerful tool for inquiry. And the way out of making assumptions is inquiry. It's to ask questions. See, if I had just looked at Cynthia that night and said, "Are you angry with me?" I wouldn't have had to have gone through neither one of us would have gone through the whole experience we went through. I'd be 5 pounds lighter, $4.99 richer. That was the cost of the cake. And we would have had a much better evening. But I didn't take the time to ask the question. Asking questions. Don Miguel Ruiz says the way to keep yourself from making assumptions is to ask questions. Make sure the communication is clear. If you don't understand, ask. Have the courage to ask questions until you are clear as you can be. And even then, do not assume you know all there is to know about a given situation. Wow, how's that? Also, find your voice to ask for what you want. Everybody has the right to tell you no or yes, but you always have the right to ask for what you want. Likewise, everybody else has the right to ask you for what they want, and you have the right to say yes or no. How would it be if we lived in that kind of a world, where we asked each other questions, where we honestly asked for what do you want? You know, when Cynthia and I first got together, she would never ask for what she wanted. We had this kind of process. What do you want? Oh, nothing. I don't know. It's like, well, but what do you want? I don't know. It's like, you know, and I'm, like most guys, conditioned to please, right? You know, and so it's like, how do you please a person who can't tell you what they want to please them, you know? So it's like, you know, so we've worked on that, and she's come a long way from, you know, since then, if I can say that. If I can't, it's too late. It's too late. She knows what it's like to be a minister's wife. What if we were to ask each other questions? What if we were to honestly ask each other for what we wanted and honestly say yes or no to giving each other what we wanted, knowing that we're not the source of the other person's happiness? Wouldn't that be a rich way to live? Wouldn't that be a powerful, wouldn't that be a fun way to live? Wouldn't that take a lot of weight off? In Byron Katie's process of the work, she says, whenever we're in stress, whenever we're in pain, find the particular thought that is bothering us. Find that thought that is bothering us. And ask 4 questions about it. Number 1, is it true? Number 2, can I absolutely know that it's true? See, there are some things we can't absolutely know that it's true, right? In fact, there's probably a whole lot of things we can't absolutely know are true. Okay? Can I absolutely know that it's true? Number 3, how do I react when I believe it? And number 4, who would I be without the thought? So let's play with that thought. Let's play with that time that I was thought that she was angry at me. If I had taken the time to ask, is it true? I would have found out, no, it's not. And it would have been dissolved right there. But I didn't ask, is it true? I keep on acting. Can I absolutely know that it's true? Well, yes, I could. I could ask her and she could tell me, and I pretty much trust that she will tell me if she's angry with me. Number 3, how do I react when I believe it? Well, I reacted rather immaturely, right? And number 4, who would I be without that thought? I would be the kind, loving person that I normally am. I wouldn't have done that. Okay? And then she says the next step of that is then turn that thought around to its several opposites. So, my partner is angry at me. The opposites are my partner is not angry at me. I'm angry at my partner. Ooh, ouch. I'm angry at myself. Ooh, really ouch. Okay? And then to find 3 genuine examples of how each of those turnarounds is either true or more true than the original thought. So to start to play with that, start to say, how is this true? Where is it that I am angry with my partner? You know, I don't like it when she doesn't say, I love the dinner you fixed. Now, in this case, it was just, I didn't hear her say it. Okay? But I don't like that. I want to be acknowledged. I view myself as a good cook, you know? What if I had said, my partner does love me? My partner is happy with me. that would have diffused that right there, which, by the way, would have been the truth. So we start to play with these opposites, and then if I look and say, where am I not loving myself? Where am I believing that I'm not lovable? Where am I believing that I would do something that my partner would be angry at? Or where am I believing that my partner would be the kind of unloving person, even though I've never experienced her being that would be unloving with me? Okay? And so we start to ask those questions of ourselves. We start to explore within ourselves and to work with that. And what this does is it opens up a whole new level of understanding. And so I would like to encourage you, if you've never worked with Byron, how many of you are familiar with Byron Katie? Have read anything by her? So that the process, I think she has that, she calls it the worksheet in the back of almost every book she's ever written. And it's a great way to go and explore this process. And if you don't, there's a couple, well, at the 9 o'clock service, there were a couple of books in the bookstore. I don't know if they're still there or not. But one of her books, any of her books, would be great to go explore this process called The Work. You can even find it online with her stuff. But to start to do that inquiry, to start to ask the questions, to start to break apart the shell of assumptions that most of us live in, okay? And to start to diffuse that and start to make it more porous. So this week I want to invite you to do 3 things, okay? The first one is to watch for the assumptions you make. Just be aware of yourself making assumptions. And we all do it. But just start to be aware of where you're doing it, both about yourself and about others. And are those assumptions bringing you heaven, or are those assumptions bringing you hell? Okay? And just notice it. Just notice it. Don't get out the big hammer then and beat yourself up for it. Okay? Do not do that. Just notice. Agreed? No hammers? No hammers. Okay. No sledgehammers, no mallets, not even a little, rubber, boom, boom. Okay. Number 2, ask questions. How would it be if you went through this week kind of being more like a kid, Hey, what is that? Why is that? You remember the age of kids, 2.5, 3 years old? Why? 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 After a while, it gets a little bit annoying, but what if we started asking more questions? Do you really feel this way? I noticed you did this, and I felt like it meant that. Am I correct in that's what it meant? No, that's not what I meant at all. Okay? So this week, ask questions. Do I really know what's going on? Is this really true? And then number 3, practice living in harmony with the way things are. Most of our unhappiness is because we're not happy with the way things are. And we never take the time to get in harmony with the way things actually are. We're constantly trying to fix everything. It's said that in marriage, how does this go? Men marry a woman hoping she never changes and gets mad because she does, and women marry a man wanting to change him and gets mad because he doesn't. Okay? We're always trying to shift and change our conditions and our situations. What if we first just became in harmony with how they are and allowed them to be what they were before we started to shift and change everything? How would that be? I think we'd have greater peace in our lives, and then we would be able to make the gentle changes if we wanted to move something a little bit of a different direction by a gentle process and by a more enlightened process, rather than trying to shove things the way that we want them to go, meeting a lot of resistance from the thing that doesn't want to get shoved. So that's our three things this week. Watch for the assumptions that you make. Just pay attention. Ask questions. And practice living in harmony with the way things are. Are you willing to play with that this week with me? Great. I'm definitely playing with it. I want to close with a quote from Byron Katie. When someone sympathizes with your anger or sadness based on your assumptions, they're just supporting your insanity. I'll read that again. When someone sympathizes with your anger or sadness based on your assumptions, and based on you taking it personally, they're just supporting your insanity. Yes, you're right. Your partner doesn't love you. And we call that a friend. A friend is just someone who agrees with you. So bring me an enemy. Enemies are very clear about what I haven't discovered yet. The enemy turns out to be their friend. Where do you go? To whom do you go to get your concepts justified. Just be aware of that this week. Am I looking for people to just agree with me? Yeah, it's like this. That's so-and-so. That's, the other so-and-so. I'm such a so-and-so. Or would we go to somebody who would disagree with us and say, maybe you should have a different thought? By the way, that's what practitioners are really good at, not being an enemy necessarily, but in coming to truth. I like to say that a practitioner is someone who will listen to your story with great compassion and not believe a word of it. Because they will see you in a higher consciousness and a higher way of being. So I invite you to be supported in whatever way is the best for you to be supported. So let's move into prayer. This Judy's all queued up over here. Thank you. So taking in a deep breath, I simply remember that there is only one infinite presence, pure, whole, perfect, and complete, exactly as it is. It is the love and the harmony and the joy of this universe. It is all that there is. It runs in, through, and as you, me, everyone. People we call enemies, people we call friends, people we know, people we don't know. This infinite presence has been running this universe for a few billion years and will probably continue doing so for a few billion more, and seems to know what it's doing. And so I trust this infinite presence. I speak my word that I open my heart and I open my mind to seeing new, to seeing fresh, to seeing with a fresh set of eyes, a set of eyes to which the Spirit can look, to see the world as it truly is, a place of love, a place of harmony, a place of the divine in motion, in action, no matter how chaotic or turbulent it might look to my intellect, to listen with my spirit, to the dance of life, to the harmony of life, to the disharmony of life, to the entire process. And trust it. I know that with my consciousness, I have the ability to dream heaven onto earth. To live that life and to let that life then be contagious with inspiration for others. So that as I am willing to awaken from the old dream, the dream of hell, the dream of suffering, and to create consciously a new dream, a dream of joy, a dream of love, a dream of harmony, that this dream transforms my life and transforms the lives around me, which transforms the lives around them and continues to ripple out in ways that I never even know of. And so I allow myself to move into alignment with Spirit in the highest and greatest way for the highest and greatest good. I say yes to the dance of life, and I recognize its beauty. Even the parts I don't like, I recognize that there is a beauty there. I recognize that the infinite presence is there too. And so I release the need to assume, and I begin to take on the form of asking, of searching, of inquiring, of wanting to know more instead of assuming that I already know. I'm willing to be vulnerable. I'm willing to be open. And for this I give thanks. For all the good that comes out of this, I give thanks. For the open, compassionate heart, for the open, compassionate mind, I give thanks. For the blessing that is in this world, I give thanks. And so I release the process of how this unfolds into a law that moves it into form, moves it into expression with divine wisdom, with divine purpose, in the most beautiful ways possible. And knowing that it does so, I release it and say, and so it is. Thank you.